And I do want to welcome everyone to the first quarterly meeting for the consortium. We are so sorry that we had to reschedule it from February, but we are glad that you were able to join us today. We are going to have a presentation by Andi Fetzner first thing right off, and then we are going to go into small group breakouts. And the reason we're doing this is Andi is going to talk about trauma-informed organizations and the importance of using trauma-informed principles in creating that trauma-informed organization, right? And then Kavita will be going over what the board has been up to in creating our new mission statement, our vision statement, really just kind of updating those things and the core values that you all helped us create last year. Those have been settled on. And then we'll go into small group breakouts that are, of course, completely and totally optional. If you want to hang out in the main room when others do breakouts, you are always more than welcome to do it. And those breakouts will we'll talk about how do we operationalize these. Like, it's really great to have these core values, right? Like, this is what we have, but like, okay, so what do we do with them? And that's kind of where the consortium is at, is like, how do we operationalize these, right? Like, how do we put these into practice, not just giving, you know, the service of like, oh great, it looks great on our web page, right? That these are the core values of the consortium. And so we would welcome your input in that. Then we have committee partner updates, some announcements, and our board updates. So we will go ahead and get right started. I'm going to pass it over to Andi Fetzner from Origins Training, and she will present on trauma-informed principles in action.
Thank you so much, Angie, for inviting me here today. And thank you so much for the welcome. I see some familiar faces, which is always nice. I am a human, so I also get a little nervous going into new spaces. And I have already had a day thus far. I don't know about y'all. So I just want to invite us to take a minute and just get to where we are at in our day here together. We're here together in this Zoom room. So we're going to take like 10 breaths. If I'm going to invite you to do that. If you're comfortable turning your attention inward and allowing yourself to disconnect from your computer or any devices, then I'm going to invite you to do that. If you're like, no, I got to send this last email, do what you got to do. Everything we do today is an invitation. So we're going to slow it down, and you don't have to count the breaths. One of my biggest pet peeves is like the breathing with the counting. I just can't. It works for some people, not for me. So as you're softening your gaze or closing your eyes, turn the attention that you give to so many inward and start to notice your breathing. Start to just be an observer of your thoughts. Start to notice any sensations in your body. And just breathe and allow and turn your attention to your breathing. We're halfway there. If your mind wanders, as it's supposed to, because that's its job, just bring your attention with intention back to your breathing. Maybe drop your shoulders, relax your jaw, release your tongue from the roof of your mouth. Something so simple, yet not always easy. With this last breath, I'm going to invite us to take it collectively. So we're going to breathe in through our nose, hold it at the top, and then a big sigh. We'll probably do that twice. So go ahead and breathe in through your nose. Hold it at the top for just a beat, and a big sigh. Letting go and releasing anything that's stuck. We'll do it one more time. In through your nose. Hold it at the top for just a beat, and release. And slowly blink your eyes and bring your attention back to our space together. If you can, I would love to see our faces on camera, if you're able. It's lonely in these Zoom rooms when there's no one to look at. So, as Angie mentioned, my name is Andi Fetzner. I am a trainer in trauma-informed things. It is my passion. Once I learned about the ACE study, I was one of those people who said, I need to scream this from the rooftops. This makes sense to me. I want to start to get to the root cause of things. As I entered the workforce as a therapist in Arizona, about 10 years ago, I began to see that the folks that I was serving alongside were just as excited and passionate as me. The teachers, the foster caregivers, the case managers, everybody on the team. But we were working in a system that was stressful, and that sometimes we would show up in ways that we weren't always proud of. So that made me want to help shift the system to do some of the trauma-informed practices, all of them hopefully, but that I was implementing in my therapeutic practice. So I shifted in 2014 to focusing more on organizational implementation of trauma-informed approaches. I'm in California now. I moved in 2016, and we've been really lucky that our state has funded a lot of initiatives around the foundational concepts of trauma-informed. And so many of the organizations that I work with are now where you all are at. They're like, okay, we get this, but like this is a culture change, and culture is hard. So I'm excited to talk to you today about the experiences that I've had working with organizations in implementing and operationalizing the principles of a trauma-informed approach. I'm excited to hear about your barriers or successes. So I'm going to invite you to share in the chat as I pull the presentation up, just anything that's on your mind today that you're hoping that I'm going to address, so that I can try to do that as we're chatting today. All right, so this is our topic: principles of a trauma-informed approach in action. I'm also a therapist in Arizona still. I do telehealth and I do EMDR at Integrative Counseling. That's a private practice. So that is also something that I'm continuing to do. Put that in my notes. That's why I remembered. So yes, please share in the chat anything you're hoping to get out of today. But one of the important pieces, one of the most important pieces I would argue, when we're talking about creating trauma-informed work, creating a trauma-informed culture, because that's what this is. It's a culture that we're trying to make, culture shift that we're trying to make, is creating a shared language. So I thought we could start out with the definition of what a trauma-informed approach is. As I'm talking about it today, I'm considering that a trauma-informed approach starts with all of us, starts with each of us. So the principles, I'm going to encourage us to recognize, how can I operationalize this in myself first before I move forward and try to do it with the clients, patients, or workforce that I support. I think of a trauma-informed approach as how we do what we do. I work a lot with operations teams, and they're like, well, we got to talk about the workflow. We got to talk about the policies and the procedures. And I say, absolutely. And how are we going to do the policy and procedure? How is it going to look? How is it going to feel? I'm a feeling person, so I bring that to the mix with folks. And so how we do what we do is a trauma-informed approach. Trauma-informed approach for our conversation today is an approach to care that promotes a culture of safety and empowerment to foster recovery and healing through safe and collaborative relationships. I know that it sounds like you all have chosen some values that you're looking to put into action. And I'm glad to hear that you've chosen some. I like to say that if you choose everything, you're choosing nothing. And while there's a million things we can focus on, I'm going to just kind of focus on the 6 principles of a trauma-informed approach. And then hopefully you all can kind of like use that as a springboard for operationalizing the ones that you are implementing. So let's get into it. Let's do this. I know that you probably have already come up with agreements for the space that you all meet in as a consortium. I want to just encourage and reinforce the importance of coming together and deciding on coming together and agreeing upon how we're going to come together. A lot of the time when I'm working with this big organization in West Virginia, and they are very focused on like, okay, well, we just need a physical space to meet. We need this, and we need to like get people bodies. Maybe we'll work through lunch. And one of the big things that we talk about is like, we're not just, doing the trauma informed. It's really about how we come together. And I know I said that already, but like, it's just so important. So agreements really dictate how we come together. And the agreements that I've put here, I'm not assuming that everyone agrees to these. I'm using them as examples. So just to kind of put that out there. Agreements, and these are just examples of being here now. We know that if we're meeting in person, it's going to look different than meeting virtually. So recognizing being here now and being present is going to look different in those spaces. Confidentiality, I like to say leave the story, but keep the lesson. Active listening. I'm going to invite you to actively listen right now if you can, and shoot me or click on the reactions so that we can see that there's some interaction happening here. Oftentimes when I do this live, we do I say, what agreements do you want to come to? People say, I want to be non-judgmental. Funny story, I don't know how to spell judgmental. I get it wrong every time. Inevitably. And I'm like, this is a great exercise for you all to not judge me in spelling judgmental. But being able to recognize that we are going to have judgments that come up for ourselves internally, and translating and transmitting that on the external level of curiosity. So it's like an internal process that like butterflies creates a butterfly from the judgment into curiosity. That's again an invitation and some language that you might be able to use. Inviting everyone to take care of yourself and your needs and ask for help if you need it. These are just invitations again, but how we come together really matters. And so I invite you to come up with agreements with the groups that you're working with as a tool and as a technique. It seems like something that is sometimes like obvious, but it really slows the process down and makes people consider, makes people think, and kind of shifts and sets the tone. So just a little tool there. So, all right. So what are we going to be talking about today? We're going to be talking about the key principles of a trauma-informed approach as defined by SAMHSA. We're going to spend a little bit of time on safety because it tends to be the one that, if it doesn't exist, gets in the way of all the others. Trustworthiness and transparency is another one of those that we're going to spend a little bit of time on. And what I'll be doing as we go through this process is showing you examples and tips, but also kind of inviting some thoughtfulness and sharing some of my own experiences around operationalizing these approaches. So thank you for sharing in the chat. It looks like there are a couple things that will be that offerings that folks gave. So Sandy says, I often see that more frontline boots on the ground folks know and understand the impacts of trauma and building resilience, but the leadership and policy and practice determiners don't. Absolutely. And we can talk about that. The buy-in from the top down, how can we educate or provide awareness to those who have little understanding of what trauma-informed approaches is inside our organization? Absolutely. So I mentioned that trauma-informed is how we do what we do. That is something that has allowed me to get into the operations space. I also like to talk about how these principles and, using them as a guide, how they can be put into other departments like facilities, how are we creating safety? I know that you all really care about safety. We have a department in one organization that I work with that is all about doing drills around like active shooter or fire drills or like a silver alert or an amber alert. So I've been able to kind of sneak into there um, by talking about safety as well, and talking about how can we create safety, trustworthiness, and transparency is another one that's helpful there, around, and de-escalation. De-escalation is a good one for that, but I'll keep talking about it. So let's keep going here. So safety, I'm going to define each one of these principles throughout the organization, staff and the people they serve, whether children or adults feel physically and psychologically safe. We're talking about relationships when we talk about trauma-informed approach. We're talking about connection, safety and connection, and understanding that if we don't have safety, we don't have a trauma-informed approach. When we talk about safety, it's not how SAMHSA defines it. When I go into organizations, or when I work with teams who are implementing this work, we allow and encourage the organization to define what each of these principles means. So here are some word clouds around what folks have come up with in different departments. Safety as defined by those who we're serving is important. It's also important if we're having conversations with the folks on the other side who are creating the organizational structure component. You may notice here that the peace, acceptance, communication, trust, and safety are really prominent. So as we practice a trauma-informed approach, as we operationalize these principles, we can note and we can really encourage people to question and consider, why are these important to us based on our life experiences? And it can be a great starting point to talk about how we feel safe, or how safety is not one thing for everyone. We can explore experiences that may have potentially felt unsafe. But because we had friends, as you see, friends, family, we had acceptance present. It's not always just about safety means there's no stress, although somebody did write no stress. That's ideal. It sometimes is that I feel safe because I have protective factors. I know we have some protective factors, folks in the group, in place. So what made the seemingly unsafe situation seem safe for us? So this helps us expand that resilience, strengths-based approach, and really allows us to expand the conversation around, being so definitive. Yes, our systems are exhausting. Yes, sometimes mistakes or miscommunications will be made. How can we create environments where people feel protected, where people feel connected, where people feel validated, emotional validation? So you might see some of those words here. Another important piece is that we are creating a shared language. So I don't know how you all feel about the bear analogy. I am a huge fan. When we talk about a trauma-informed approach, this bear analogy of like what happens in us can be really helpful for everyone, because we are all human, whether we want to admit that we react to a bear in the woods or not. Whether we want to admit that sometimes an email can feel like a bear in the woods because our brains and our bodies can't tell the difference, unfortunately, sometimes. But just using the bear analogy, and I'll kind of talk a little bit about what that is right now. So you're walking through the woods, you come across a bear. And so what happens when you come across the bear? You're just walking along, you're having like connection with nature, you're having the best day ever, and your lid flips. You go from having the capacity to think, consider, make intentional conscious choices to full reactive hot brain, sympathetic nervous system, amygdala, emotional response, right? And we adapt in those situations. We go into fight, flight, freeze, and fawn. We get outside of our resilience and connection zone. The more frequently the situation occurs, the more intense, the longer it goes on, the smaller our resilience and connection zone gets. But what we're trying to do here with our work in trauma-informed approach is we are trying to get that thinking cap on and spend more time in that resilience and connection zone. We want to acknowledge that sometimes when our lid is flipped, what can happen is we can do some damage. We want to, so the glitter jar is another great analogy that talks about how the stress hormones are released in our body, and it can take some time for those stress hormones to metabolize and for us to get into that resilience and connection zone. I like the volcano analogy too, because sometimes when our lid is flipped, we do damage like a volcano, and then we are left to kind of acknowledge and clean that up. But we always want to keep resilience in mind when we are talking about this work. And it's not comfortable to talk about stress. It's not comfortable to acknowledge and be vulnerable. Oftentimes people say like, oh, I have to be strong and I can't talk about these things. So part of what we are tasked with is shifting that paradigm and giving folks language to be able to talk about this stuff. Shared language, the whole we can name it, we can tame it. I love the little sayings, so I'm going to say them throughout. But in order to tame it, we actually have to talk about it. Not just name it, we have to actually talk about it if we're going to move into healing-centered communities and organizations. So we have to connect around the volcanoes, and we have to recognize that it's safe, because what we're doing is we're aiming to get into that resilience and connection zone. Being vulnerable is brave. I so often, really, like earlier this week on Tuesday, I was talking to someone, and she's new to an organization. She said, you know, I'm new here, and my manager, her face is just, she just seems like she's always mad. She does seem like she's always mad in her face. It's true. And so, but she's not. She's so sweet. She's so kind. But her impression is she comes off as kind of like she's mad. So we talked about using this language and how, you know, some people have their experience and she can have her own experience, and it gave her some language. She said, you know, I thought that I wasn't supposed to talk about this, especially at work. And I said, well, I mean, if it's helpful, you know, it's getting in the way of you being able to help support and check in patients when they come in, then we got to talk about it. So we did, and it's great. It's a great starting point, just to give that language and give that shared language. So shared language, creating safety is number one. I really believe that that's the foundation for everything. It builds trustworthiness and transparency. We're going to define this one. The organizational operations and decisions are conducted with transparency, which means you can see through. You can see all the things, with the goal of building and maintaining trust with clients, family members, among staff, and others involved in the organization. I wanted to put predictability here, and I'm just going to speak quickly to it, but I found that there's one that's even more important when it comes to trustworthiness and transparency. So we'll talk about that. But first, I want to talk about predictability. So predictability creates trustworthiness and transparency, even when it's unpredictable, predictable unpredictability. When we think back to safety, we looked at, you know, those pieces that create safety, friends, family, relationships, and those relationships can be the predictable part of the unpredictable situation. And that creates trustworthiness. I'm going to be here with you. I'm not sure what's going to happen in court today, but I'm going to be here with you, and we're going to figure it out together. I know that school was really rough today, and you know, I don't know how we're going to solve this problem, but you're not alone in this, and you can trust that I'm going to be here with you. So I just wanted to throw that one out there. Predictability is really helpful. And if you can create concrete predictability, that's great too, but life happens. So I'm less attached to that one these days. All right, so the other piece about trustworthiness and transparency is recognizing that things don't always work out as we plan, and sometimes we make mistakes, and making mistakes is okay. Normalizing making mistakes. Even within your organizational orientation, normalizing making mistakes can be really helpful. In this organization, for example, sometimes we make mistakes. This is how we handle it when we make mistakes. When we make mistakes, you can talk to your supervisor, you can talk to your peer. We're just about, helping support you and your patients. We're not about getting in trouble. That's something that's an old thing that's not very helpful. We take a trauma-informed approach and we recognize that we're all human. So we want to normalize, as you come into this new position, as you work within our organization, that it's safe and it's okay to make a misstep. And it's easier for all of us if we own our mistakes. It's most helpful, I have found, when supervisors, when people in charge have modeled this and have shown what that looks like, shown it what it looks like. And we can turn to the professionals of apology and accountability. I don't want to get too hung up on language, but I do think language is important. So I encourage you to use what works for you. But ingredients of a good apology, as taken from Harriet Lerner's 9 Essential Ingredients of a True Apology on Unlocking with Brene Brown, which we all love a good Brene Brown anything, generally in this group, does not include the word but. Focuses on actions and not the other person's response, includes an offer of reparation or restitution that fits the situation, that isn't based in shame, that isn't, well, I should quit my job now, that isn't, let me give you $50 because I made a mistake and I was late today or something. It doesn't overdo, okay? Like, it doesn't get caught up in who's more to blame or who started it. It really needs to be backed by corrective action, recognizing that we may fall again, because that is part of it, but the intention is there. It requires that we do our best to avoid a repeat performance, shouldn't serve to silence others. It's not about punitive measures, and it doesn't ask the hurt party to do anything, even to forgive. It's not about coming together and saying who's right, who's wrong, who's better, who's worse. It's about acknowledging the hurt, acknowledging the damage, acknowledging the mistake, and being able to say, okay, let's kind of come back together and reconnect. What I like to talk about too is really looking at trauma-informed as a way to connect, and trauma is what has disconnected so many of us. All right, so I'm going to take some comments because I see them popping up in the chat. So it looks like normalizing making mistakes, creating and modeling a predictable response for making mistakes, making repair is really important. It's totally different to implement easy to follow predictable ways of doing this, not just normalizing it, recognizing mistakes are reality and inevitable, and the key to moving forward is recognizing that we are imperfect humans. Absolutely, I hear that. It's much more helpful for me when I know that I'm alongside other humans. All right, so let's keep moving. Collaboration and mutuality. Importance is placed on partnering and the leveling of power differences between staff and clients and among organizational staff, from clerical, housekeeping personnel, professional staff, administrators, demonstrating that healing happens in relationships. Dance around that one. And in the meaningful sharing of power and decision making. We'll dance for that one too. The organization recognizes that everyone has a role to play in a trauma-informed approach. And I love the phrase, you do not have to be a therapist to be therapeutic. Collaboration and mutuality. Relationships heal. Relationships hurt, relationships heal. So if relationships hurt, then connection can seem like a bear. Similar to normalizing making mistakes, when we first interact with people, it can be helpful to normalize and encourage asking for and receiving help. But also recognizing this approach starts with us. And those protective factor trainers out there, there's some great activities around what kind of help we ask for and which ones we are more and less comfortable with. I think the activity has to do with like asking for toilet paper. We might be more comfortable than asking for money, or maybe asking for a ride. And we might notice that our own judgments around collaboration, asking for help, around accepting others as like on our, as partners or as collaborators, can come up. We want to help other people, and working with other people, those other people might feel like bears sometimes, can put us in a flip lid situation. So it's really helpful to notice, my stuff's coming up, my control's coming up, my fear's coming up. Here's one. My hyper independence is coming up. My hyper independence that was so helpful to me growing up, that allowed me to be independent, that allowed me to get everything done and be responsible for everything. That's getting in the way of this, the operationalization, I said it, of the collaboration and mutuality. I'll say that again. Hyper independence can get in the way of collaboration and mutuality. So it's an old thing that used to work for us. It's a trauma response that used to work for us and kept us safe for a while, but now can be really helpful for us to recognize and see when that's coming up. So some of the beliefs that might come up for us, oh, this is where my psychologist heart just gets so excited to talk about this stuff, because this is where the real healing can happen, and it's so magical. What can come up for us is, I'm weak. It's my job to help other people. I'm responsible for other people's emotions. They're more important than me. They need help more than I do. So collaboration and mutuality is a really, really tough one. I think it can often be breezed over as like, oh yeah, we totally collaborate, no big deal. But we have our own traumas around connection. We have our own traumas and beliefs and fears around working with certain systems. Maybe we have our own stuff around DCFS. Maybe we have our own stuff around collaborating with the court system, or we have the healthcare system or the education system. So for this one, I want to encourage us to really pause and reflect on our own stuff that might be coming up, and work to shift from the mean bear to the more happy bears, the more safe bears, and ask these bears for help. So it's kind of silly. It's kind of, hopefully it's kind of funny, but that's my fawning for my own my own trauma response. But I hope it's relatable. So as we think about oh, it's a bear, but it might be a helpful bear. It might be a bear that can sing to us. It might be a care bear. It might be a poo bear. So, considering we can work with each other, we can feel like that can be scary, but it's also, really important. Okay. Peer support. So peer support and mutual self-help are key vehicles for establishing safety and hope, building trust, enhancing collaboration, utilizing their stories and lived experience to promote recovery and healing. The term peers refers to people with lived experiences of trauma. In the case of children, this may be family members of children who've experienced traumatic events and are key caregivers in their recovery. Peers have also been referred to as trauma survivors. Many of us coming into this work have our own story. When I was in my master's program for therapy, for being a therapist, I had a professor in my internship, and we would come together after we would go to our internship. Then all the students would come together with this professor. This professor was very old school, very type A, kind of by the book. And he would say things like, you need to help those people. You need to make rules. There was no agreements. It was I remember there was one woman, this is what stuck out to me. There was one woman, she was working with adolescents. Okay. And she was like, yeah, they cuss a lot. And he said, you need to make some rules around that. You need to make some rules, and they need to just be behaving, that they can't be doing that. And she was fairly mortified, and she was not. I was always the one, for better or worse, surprisingly, who was standing up to the professors and saying, I don't think that makes sense to me. Can you help me understand? Although not in those words, because I didn't have them back then. But it was a situation where she was kind of afraid, even though, and we talked after class, she was like, I remember being one of those teenagers. I remember sitting in a circle saying like, F you, F this, all these things. She's like, I don't know that that's the right answer. And so we talk about like peer support. This isn't about like those people and like their stories. It's about like, sometimes it's about tapping into our own story narrative and getting in touch with that and recognizing how that can connect, the feeling can connect. Maybe it's not the exact situation, but like connecting on a parallel level with the folks who we're serving around support. Kavita says radical acceptance. All right, I love that. So helping in a top-down way can be very harmful. And that's kind of what like the traditional paradigm is. That's kind of what is often taught in schools of like, I'm going to help those people. We need to help them. And they don't say this like in school, but this is what I felt. And I don't know if you share this experience, and I'm just sharing mine. It's like they need to assimilate to the way that things are, the like normal way. They need to like accept the reality of like, this is the way things are. That never felt right for me, and probably not for most of you since you're here. So helping in a top-down way can reinforce feelings of helplessness. It can apply that one person is more recovered than another, that one person like somebody's got it all figured out. If you do, please PM me later. Send the message that survivors are incapable of directing their own lives. Learned helplessness is a problem for folks who've been operating in the system for so long, because we can teach people that they can't do things and that we're there to help them, that we're there to do the things for them, versus we're there to walk alongside them or to connect them with like supports. So this is one that I feel very passionately about. This is one that I've totally failed in my life, and that I hope that I can continue to work on, and that I continue to deepen, and that I encourage you to explore as well. And then I also want to put this up here because it's very uncomfortable sometimes to do this work where the magic happens, and definitely is outside of our comfort zone. All right. So I don't know where I'm at on time, but I'm going to try and get through these if you want to shoot me a message. So empowerment, voice, and choice. We're looking at, I'm just going to read these key points here because this one's very long. I did try to make it smaller, but it's 3 topics. So, individual strengths and experiences are recognized and built upon. The organization fosters a belief in the primacy of the people served, in resilience, and the ability of individuals, organizations, and communities to heal and promote recovery from trauma. Not just like dealing with the trauma, but really healing from it, healing through it. That means like going. Yesterday I was talking to somebody and she said, I want to be like a buffalo. Have you heard of the buffalo? And I was like, no. So apparently buffaloes go through the storm and cows avoid the storm. So much weather conversation these days. So so we want to be like the buffalo. We want to go into the storm with the folks who we're supporting, so that we can all come out, kind of, I don't know what the good analogy would be for that, washed and cleaned and ready for the next day, whatever. So operations, workforce development, and services are organized to foster empowerment for staff and clients alike. We are not sacrificial lambs. We are not martyrs. This system should be serving all the folks who are involved in it. Clients are supported in shared decision-making, choice, and goal setting to determine the plan of action that they need to move forward. Yes, we come out more resilient. Thank you, Angie. Duh, that's the word. Okay. I also want to say here that when we talk about like person-centered care, sometimes like person-centered care and empowerment, voice, and choice have to do with that person's network also. So like, for example, if somebody is experiencing like suicidality, maybe they have a traumatic brain injury, they have some developmental issues going on, maybe they just went through a big event, a big experience, and they have a support person in place, or a family member, or whoever their support is. As we're creating these like shared decision-making, choice, and goal setting, utilizing those as supports so that they can support the person more sustainably. Like we want to work ourselves out of a job, right? So like utilizing the community as part of this empowerment, voice, and choice, setting people up for success, and offer them a structure that values the person over the profit, right? Over the keeping them in our system, and also voice and choice over compliance. We want to encourage self-advocacy and our role as staff as facilitators of recovery. Oh, Tammy, we can talk about TBI all day long. I have personal experience with navigating the system with a family member with special needs and with traumatic brain injury. So empowerment, voice, and choice can look like all of these different things. Some of them are like, oh yeah, totally to us. Some of them are like, oh, I don't know about that. This one also overlaps with the next one, which is cultural, historical, and gender humility. But empowerment, voice, and choice, and cultural, historical, and gender awareness, I think like, I just want to like parallel these two. So this can look like a lot of different things. And it's helpful for us to stay curious and to be aware as we're navigating our role in folks' journey to their own self-discovery. It's not up to us to like decide if their thing is a chapter of their life or if it's for forever. How many of us have done something forever? There's been many chapters of each of our lives. So just remembering that in our own context. Okay. Cultural, historical, and gender humility. So this topic is also one that is three things in one, but it's so deep, and it definitely starts with us. What we're talking about here is the organization moves past cultural stereotypes and biases, which means that we have to be aware of what we think is normal, what we think has always been this way, and we offer access to whatever the needs are of the people in our community who we're serving, and to the staff who we are serving within the system. We incorporate policies, protocols, and processes that are responsive to the racial, ethnic, and cultural needs of individuals served, and recognizes and addresses historical trauma and leverages the healing value of traditional cultural connections. When I was working in the system in Arizona, I had a family who didn't want to take the kiddo to the drumming circle because it was inconvenient for them to go to the reservation. And they said, well, we can put them in another activity instead, like soccer. And so just kind of being aware that like, those are not the same thing. One is a traditional cultural connection, and the other is a sport, which if they're not, just let's have a conversation about that and what the person wants and what honors that individual's experience. Because we are human, right? Our own beliefs, fears, biases can get in the way of this one. We have the thing in our own brain that is normal, that is like the template. And so coming to spaces with curiosity, coming to spaces, having Googled and like looked up some information so we have some language around things, because it's not up to the people in the community to give us all the information about the whole community. It's helpful when we can recognize and learn about the nuances of each. For example, like in the Jewish community, there's Judaism, there's like Orthodox Judaism, there's Hasidic Judaism, and everyone practices and honors their cultural or religious Judaism differently, which there are different things. I only know that because I did lots of Googling, spent time in the community, and have friends and community members in my neighborhood who are part of that community. When we notice shoulds coming up for us, when we notice it's always been like this, they should learn to, they'll get used to it, that is an indication that maybe we are not in our beginner's mind. We also want to be aware of systems and policies and procedures that can impede on cultural holidays, processes, prayer, uniform. Like those requirements can get in the way of people expressing and living their culture, living their gender, living their existence. Kind of going back to the one where we were talking about making mistakes, recognize that sometimes we might make mistakes as it relates to these things. And we can say, I did not mean to offend. Please help me learn. I'm still learning. And so going back to the historical component here, also knowing that we as people in the system show up and we are representative of every experience that person has had with whatever system that is, whether it be healthcare, DCFS, social services, education, or anything in between, therapists, anything in between. So when we can meet the folks who are serving and one another with a beginning mind, there are many possibilities. But when we think that we are experts, there are few possibilities for where we can go from there. There's few possibilities for healing. So that was a lot of information. And
That was
I hope that there were like
amazing
little
information.
tidbits, little
Yes.
tidbits that y'all were able to take. I can send over the presentation and you all can utilize that in your organizations if you find it helpful. You can also connect with me if you want more information. This is kind of what I do, so I'm more than happy to explore how I might be able to better support you in your organization and your work. Thank you for having me today.
Andi, thank you so much. It was great. Kavita put in there so many nuggets. And I loved that you ended on always come in with a beginner's mind, right? Like we have found that, so many of us, it's like, I think a lot in this space too, is we feel like, oh, if we're not an expert in it, then what value do we have? And really that value, especially in a trauma-informed space, comes from being humble enough to say, we're all in this together, and what can I learn from you? And where are the strengths, right? It helps us take it out of the pathogenic, piece that we've had trauma into that salutogenic piece too, right? Is understanding that we all have strengths. We're all here. Like, we're all here. and we're still, in these meetings, we're still going on with our lives, doing our things. And I think we think of resilience as like not having any adversity, and knowing that the most resilient people are the people who have experienced the most adversity, right? And that are still here. And so thank you so much. Does anybody have questions from Andi before we move on? And I know from experience that Andi is just an email away. So if you have any questions from her, we will share her contact info along with the recording. And Andi, thank you for sharing the presentation. Joey did ask, what is the glitter jar analogy?
Okay, so I use the glitter jar analogy in parallel with the volcano when I'm talking about the stress cycle. So the glitter jar is you shake. Actually, I think I have. Oh no, it's in my car. I brought it to the office. So I have a glitter jar. I shake the glitter jar, and that's like when you feel like there's like a bear happening, right? So like the bear happens, and the glitter represents your stress hormones, all of those hormones that activate in your body and turn on the systems that keep us safe and turn off the systems that are like rest and restore. And when we sit and pause and we watch the glitter settle over time, it looks different for everybody. Every glitter jar I make looks different. But over time, the glitter like rests to the bottom, and then we talk about that metabolizing the stress hormones. And that's in parallel to the volcano. And when we like just keep it shaking and keep it shaking and keep it shaking, and the stress hormones build up, and then the volcano erupts, and then that can cause issues. And it can erupt internally. It might erupt and we can feel it, or it might erupt externally where other people can see it. So again, that freeze and fawn internal damage that can be done by our stress hormones consistently staying activated. And, the volcano erupting internally is as damaging, if not more damaging, than when it erupts externally and other people can see it.
I love that. I also use the glitter jar as helping people understand that it takes time to regulate. Right. So like when the glitter is all over and you're dysregulated and all those stress hormones are going, that, it takes a minute. That glitter just doesn't be like, okay, snap out of it and you can do anything right to it to make it go automatically down. You have to stop shaking it.
Yeah.
Right. In
Mhm.
order for, and then even after you stop shaking it, it takes a minute for it to all settle down. Like that's how our systems function too. Thank you so much, Andi. I am going to pass it over to Kavita. Let me share our PowerPoint again. And Kavita will kind of go into what the board has been up to around our mission statement, our vision statement, and our core values.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Angie. And thank you again, Andi, for that presentation. That was great. My biggest nugget was be the buffalo. I don't know. I just love that piece. Instead of the cow. I think that's the last piece that goes with the buffalo. And thanks to everyone for participating with your emojis or emotions, whatever those things are called, and the chat box. So Angie's right. So the board has been going through a journey probably over the past 6 months. We were working on our strategic plan or action plan and realized that, as we've mentioned in the past, that we really needed to pause and take a look at our mission statement, vision statement, and core values. Those of you that have been around with the consortium for a while, you may remember that we had a vision statement, but we actually didn't have a mission statement or a set of core values. For those of you that have been around, I think I saw Marsha join us on our call. I don't know if you're still on, Marsha, but well, you are. Marsha started the consortium as a very grassroots movement. And then about 5 years ago, we started to take the steps to become a nonprofit organization. With that came the development of a vision statement, but we had never really got back to finishing that up. And by finishing that up, it meant to at least have a mission statement. And then to take steps further than that was core values. So thanks to actually Angie and her pushing the board gently, yet very committed to having the conversation with the board around the importance of having a mission statement and a set of core values that really becomes the foundation of who the consortium is. So I'm extremely proud to present to you where the board has landed. Last time we came together, we did preview with you all the core values. But today we get to, in addition to that, preview with you all the mission statement. So you'll see it up here on your screen. I will share with you that in order to get to this place, we had a consultant help us really think through the feedback from consortium members, and we did the core value unveiling, and also to think through, what really has been and will be the mission of the ACES Consortium. So you'll see that on your screen, building community resilience through authentic human engagement. All right, next slide. And Angie, please chime in at any point. All right. Our vision statement was one that existed. Since we were developing our core values and then we looked at our mission statement, we wanted to actually take a look at the vision statement. And thanks, Tammy. The vision statement didn't quite align, and it didn't actually reflect the work of that we were doing. The consortium has grown, and as you all know, because you're all in it every single day, even just the work of trauma-informed care, understanding of ACEs, and the role that the consortium plays in our community has evolved even in the past 5 years. So since we were already looking at the core values in our mission statement, we also took a look at the vision statement and made some tweaks to it to make sure that it sounded more in line with the vision of the consortium. So our vision is a trauma-informed Arizona that nurtures hope and the growth healing, and resilience of individuals and communities. And I hope as you're reading that, that really resonates with you, but that's why we have the breakout groups. And as a reminder, if you weren't with us at our last meeting, these are our core values: empathic safety, collaborative, belonging, intentional, integrity, and community. Thank you all for your feedback from our last meeting. All of your feedback was reviewed and looked at to make sure that it was incorporated into where we landed the core values.
And from your feedback, we actually changed one of them. So belonging used to be inclusive. Amy Castellanos, she's not here, with ADE, their group had some really great conversation around the word inclusive, and how belonging really kind of elicited that feeling of like, we all belong, like we all are here. It's not like we're inviting anybody to come here, you know, as that this space is kind of all of ours. So before Kavita goes through kind of what, and we've changed a bit of the wording in some of what the core values mean from our last one. And that was also from your feedback around what the definitions of. But thinking about each one of these core values, the breakout rooms we're going to do, they're going to be 10 minutes. You're going to be able to choose what breakout room you want to go into. You can always stay in the main room if you would like also. But to have the conversation of how do we operationalize these? This is really great to have these words and to have, you know, these core values and these definitions. We don't want them to stop there, right? So like, what do these words mean to you? What do they look like in action? So just kind of thinking about that as Kavita goes through their definitions.
Yeah, absolutely, Angie. You couldn't have said it any better. We really want to make sure that these don't sit on a shelf and collect dust and look pretty. We want to make sure that we are holding ourselves accountable across our organization, and members, employees, board, keeping ourselves accountable to these core values. So here are the definitions of each. So empathic safety are words and action promote and nurture a sense of safety for all. Collaborative, we honor and respect all paths and share in collaborative decision-making to achieve lasting impact. So this is the one that we changed, belonging. Arizona ACES is an open, welcoming, and engaging space where individuals and communities can be authentic. Intentional. We are committed to being thoughtful and purposeful in all of our interactions. And the last one here, core values. Integrity. We operate in a manner that is authentic, transparent, and trustworthy. And last, community. Arizona ACES provides resources through supportive relationships to empower individuals and strengthen their communities. So as we move into our next activity, Angie's already explained what we'll be doing. We'll do short 10 minutes. There will be a breakout group for each one of these. So you get to choose if there's one that really resonated with you. So again, the 6 were empathic safety, collaborative, belonging, intentional, integrity, community. Choose one that either speaks to you or actually one that maybe didn't speak to you as much and you want to kind of push and stretch your brain a little bit. So maybe pick one that you're like, I really want to think about that with some other consortium members and push my understanding and how I can operationalize that. And then we'll come together after 10 minutes and share what each group had talked about.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. They are opened. Feel free to choose the room. If a little button doesn't come up for you, you can go to you can go to the breakout rooms down at the bottom of your screen, click on breakout rooms, and it'll open them up for you so that you can choose.
And if you're like me, the little pop-up box that popped up, scroll all the way down, and that's where you'll see the rooms to join.
For those of you in the main room, just letting everyone know that we've set to close the rooms. Everyone will be back joining us in roughly 30 seconds. All right, welcome back, everyone. I cannot help it that every single time I do breakout rooms, every single time, and I do them quite a bit, but when we come back, the Welcome Back Cotter song is in my head every single time. I can't even talk about doing breakouts without Welcome Back Cotter being sung in my head. So I don't know what it is, but it is like stuck. We need a new song. Oh, anyway, we would love to hear feedback from you all. This is recorded. You're more than welcome to put it in the chat. We save the chat too, but just kind of wanted to take a few minutes and hear what you all talked about.
Hey, Angie, I don't know what group. We were in the group for collaborative,
Yeah.
and I'd not to put Thomas on the spot, but I'd like to put Thomas on the spot and say, because we didn't get to hear Thomas's voice in our breakout. So I was going to say, if you want to share a little bit about what we talked about and add in some of yours, that way we still have your voice, Thomas.
Thank you. I mean, there's nothing more to add. I would just say through collaborative, we were just talking about the importance of synergy, like kind of deconstructing the way that we typically think of things and the way that the majority of taking the collective wisdom of like the indigenous people and the way that they already function, that kind of came out of it, of like, how do we move towards that direction versus the dominant culture of individualism. So collective, really being collaborative and working together for synergy is pretty much what I gathered the most out of what we discussed. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Thomas. All right, let's go to a different group. How about community? Who was in that group? That actually was quite a large group. Oh, my video's on. Anyone? Oh man, I wish I had the breakout group so I could do what Renee just did to Thomas. Just kidding. Was that you, Clyde? Which group were you in, Clyde?
I was in the community work group. If you like, and if it's okay with my compadres, I can go ahead.
Please do.
Called me. So good morning, good morning, everyone. We were in the community work group, and I was in there with two young ladies, and what we basically talked about is what the community looks like, that there could be several communities within one community. And we also talked about knowing where the resources are for the community and how to get people connected to the resources, the different types of resources. And also a community should look like one that should be helping one another and everyone should be getting along. So is that basically what we talked about, ladies?
That's correct.
Okay, thank you, that's it.
Awesome. Thank you, Clyde. And thanks for confirming, Sandra. All right. What about the group on empathic safety? Would someone like to share what that group talked about?
That was Mary and I. And I had to confess that I joined that group because sometimes empathy is harder for me. I tend to be more of a thinker than a feeler. And that often in the work in nonprofit work, especially, and in just talking about trauma-informed care, sometimes when I can see that resistance on somebody's face about why this would be important, or what it's like for somebody to experience poverty and then have it compounded with abuse, and then have it compounded with I got sick and I missed a paycheck, and now like I'm struggling like 10 times worse than before, and kind of explaining those things and seeing somebody's eyes look at you like, well, okay, but I don't really think that, you know, it's necessary, or I don't understand what you're saying about trauma-informed care. That's where my empathy would really be challenged, where it's like, I don't know how to be empathetic if other people aren't. And Mary and I both said that sometimes came up. So we started talking about just how we can get around that, and coming into places where we can always make the assumption that people are suffering in some way. And so coming in already being empathetic towards somebody's version of suffering or whatever they're carrying for that day, before anything else, and not needing to be understood, but wanting to just be there and listen to whatever it is that they have as well, that can often help us.
Awesome. Thank you, Michelle. Mary, anything that you'd like to add to that?
No, I think Michelle did a great job explaining our conversation, and I really enjoyed it.
Great. Thank you, Bill. All right. We covered collaborative, belonging. Was anyone from that group, would anyone from that group like to share? Oh man, we have a quiet group this morning. All right, that's okay. Just again, belonging, you know, that concept of a core value. Yeah, I agree, Tammy, very much. So Tammy just said in the chat that explanation of empathy really ties also into our core value of belonging. So when we think about how to operationalize and implement this one, how can we each embody being open and welcoming and creating engaging spaces where we all can feel authentic and be who we are designed to be. All right.
Yeah, and Kavita, I can just speak briefly to that. I was in that group. So we did each kind of talk about in each of our settings, just little small things that can be, you know, done, providing that warm welcome, whether it's students or whether it's adults, or and just the piece of belonging connection. And we love the change from inclusion to belonging, because that word is in the educational setting, you know, we measure that in the educational setting, belonging, connection. So it's nice because you can actually get an objective measure of it, and how the students feel. But there are small little things, and providing the space and the time is so critical, because one of our members mentioned that that was removed from her workspace, that time and space for the collaboration. And they kind of lost that sense of connection and belonging, and the morale went down, and everything really, you know, has changed at her workplace. So yeah, so that was just kind of our discussion.
That's awesome. Thank you, Dr. Downway. All right. Last one that we had a group form around was intentional. Is there anyone from that group that would like to share what they discussed?
Yes, I was voted in. I was voted to speak.
Sabrina.
Yes.
You voted into the island.
Yes. We had a pretty large group. I think there was 5 of us: Betty, Carla, Monica, and Joey, and myself. We started the conversation just on what does intention mean, kind of that word. So we talked about impact and purpose and meaning. We then went into talking a little bit about, how are we intentional, or what is this concept is? And so the thought of making a conscious choice or making a decision, being intentional, having a purpose, having an intent, and having a plan. So we talked about planning and the needing to plan, the questions of we need to know what and why when we're being intentional. And then Joey kind of added the additional of not only making a plan, but then moving to action. Like what that has to result in action and being accountable and moving forward. And so he mentioned obviously being a change agent to that and moving forward. And so we did discuss a little bit about what that could look like in our own place, and then how could we make a change moving forward individually in this. However, we did come to a consensus that we all come from different roles, but we all have the same intention and the same purpose.
Yeah, I love that. That's so true. Very, very true.
Oh, the word responsibility came up. Yes.
Mhm. I love that. Thank you for sharing. Thank you for that group's thoughts. The one that we didn't have a breakout group for was integrity. And maybe sometimes that's a little bit of a harder nut to crack in terms of, like, not that it doesn't resonate with us, but when we think about how to operationalize that, how to put that into action, maybe we didn't have people join that group. Maybe it's a little bit harder to think about. So integrity, as we defined it for our consortium, was to operate in a manner that is authentic, transparent, and trustworthy. And that's why I love being able to break these down into definitions, because it kind of makes it a little bit easier for us to think about what it means for our behavior and our actions as members of the consortium. So maybe that's one that we can all reflect on through our day today and think about how to put that into action. I invite you all, as Andi had mentioned, she's inviting us all. I love that. I'm inviting you all to stay committed to these core values of our consortium. Whether however you are associated with the consortium, these core values now, it is incumbent on us to live these out in the communities that we work in, as we represent the consortium, as we interact with each others. And arguably even more important than that, maybe, is to, how do we hold each other accountable to these? And how do we do that in a way that feels safe and respectful and kind, but it doesn't deter us from reminding each other if we're acting a little bit out of alignment with our core values, which is okay. We make mistakes, right? We're human, as Andi taught us this morning, and as we probably already all know, but that shouldn't make us shy to be able to reach out to each other and in a supportive manner, invite a conversation around our core values and how we can align to what we are committing to today. And that's welcomed, no matter whether you're talking to Angie, a board member, each other. Please know that that's the whole point of having core values, is for us to be able to hold each one of them in a sacred space and to be able to live and breathe them. All right, I'm going to hand things back to Angie. Thank you so much, everyone, for your participation in the breakout rooms. Yeah,
Thank you, everyone. Operating, right? How to put these into action is always that hardest part, right? Is like, what does that look like? And the thing is all of these things are already in action. We know what they look like, right? It's that kind of combining, like we think in trauma informed, I think a lot of times that we need to do something different, right? Like, oh, this is something we have to do. Where it's really something that we are and that we have to be, right? Like, how do we do that within these principles? What are those things that we're already doing? And I really appreciate everyone giving their feedback on that. All right, we are going to move to committee updates. I know we've been sitting for a long time. We're here at about an hour and a half. We are just about done, and we appreciate you all hanging in there with us. Our committees do a lot of incredibly great work. These are always open to everyone. Our Creating Trauma Sensitive Arizona Schools Committee, our chairs are Laura Wiggins and Jennifer Blau. We thank Jennifer so much for coming on board. Neither one of them could be here today because of their schedules, rightfully so. But the schools group meets the first Wednesday of every month over Zoom from 4 to 5:30. And they focus on really bringing in kind of professional development pieces. All of our recordings are on the website, and sorry, I'm looking at what the next speaker is April. Are we in March? We're in March. April is Dr. Sue Wolf and Tiffany Wilkinson from Empowerment Research, and they're going to be talking on COVID-19 and its pandemic, the effects in interrupted neurodevelopment brain injury in our youth. And so you can register for that on our website. Sorry, I literally lost my Zoom space here. Our next one is our rural committee. This one has been on hiatus because we need a chair. So if you are interested in being the chair for our rural community committee, we did really great work. Last year, we did community screenings, film screenings, and really bringing the rural community together, understanding that we know that what the rural communities need is way different than what our urban and suburban communities need, and really giving a place for our community to connect with each other and to network. What's working in your community? How can we make this work in ours? Unfortunately, my bandwidth as chair has shortened to the point that I can't consistently take this on. And so as a chair, if you are interested, what the responsibility would just be joining those, convening those meetings every month. I support you on the back end with Zoom and all of those pieces, registration, and just kind of really organizing that committee and what it does. So if you're interested, please let me know. We would really love to get that committee meeting back up. And I will pass it over to Sabrina, who is chair of our communications committee.
Thank you, Angie. I don't have too many updates. I just wanted to let you guys know we are still moving along with our newsletter. So we put those out bi-monthly. So for every 2 months, we do have one out. I think we just completed our 4th. So we've been running really, really, really great with that. And on that newsletter, it's really just some updates from the ACEs Consortium. We also add a little bit of facts just on ACEs into that. And so it's a newsletter that's kind of new, but if you have any feedback or options to that, we would love that. We always love additional feedback. And then if you would like to join the committee, what we're getting ready to do is creating a calendar of communications. We also like to communicate through our social media. So we've been trying to just add a little bit extra to different social media accounts on Facebook, get a little bit more interaction there, and then Instagram. So we're creating a calendar of just kind of shooting out just different messages throughout to engage more people and to really understand the awareness of the ACEs consortium here in Arizona. If you are interested in joining the communication committee, currently we do meet on Wednesdays, usually the 1st or 2nd. Midday lunch is usually the best option. So around that 12 o'clock hour. Our group has kind of been great, and then it's kind of dwindled down. So I am looking for active members. If you are interested, I can put my email in the chat and you can let me know and join our groups. Right now they are virtual, but we are looking, hopefully, fingers crossed, to actually do an in-person meeting in the next couple months here. So that would be wonderful if you could join for that. Other than that, I don't have any other updates.
Thank you, Sabrina. And I love your newsletters. So we send them out to all the members, and then had a great idea. Sabrina did this week of asking us to put them on the website. And so for the next newsletter, which is April, May, on the website at the end of March. Pass it over to Sandy for our training work group update.
Thanks, Angie. Good morning, everyone. We completed in February our first training of trainers for 2023. We had 32 folks that participated. We had a group from Puerto Rico, from their migrant center in Puerto Rico. So that was very exciting to have those folks on board. And if my calculations are correct, I think we are now over 400 certified trainers across Arizona, across the scattered across the nation, and now we can say we're international. So it was really fun having such a variety of folks in the last group. Our work group is meeting monthly. Right now, thankfully, and I know Angie off camera is doing a happy dance as I say that we pretty much have our curriculum set for a while for our training modules and modular components. So the work group is shifting from focusing on curriculum development to more trainer support. So we put out a survey to certified trainers. Thank you to the folks that responded. Got a lot of good feedback in how we can best support our certified trainers. And the top 3 responses were all around training and development and networking. So continuing education training, some on-demand training. Some of the feedback we've gotten from trainers is this new content is amazing, but people are wanting to dive and get more support in understanding it more deeply. So the couple of action steps that we have taken is the consortium has a platform has a space on the Circle platform, and part of that is a private space for certified trainers. So we're going to work on developing that space more. So if you are a certified trainer over the next few months, you're probably going to get an invitation to join Circle. And many of you did, but we're going to renew that invitation to join that private certified trainer space. And that's the space that we are building on-demand trainings and looking at how we can best support folks. The other, in the comment section, a lot of folks are craving in-person gatherings. So we have started talking about small certified trainer community gatherings, things that folks can do on their own. And so we are working on right now a pilot run of this somewhere in Central Phoenix. So stay tuned, more details to follow if you're in the Phoenix area, but also creating a trainer community, small community gathering guide, so that no matter where you are in the state, if you want to bring a group of trainers together for mutual support, to share information, to support one another during trainings, all of those good things, that is going to be coming soon. I think that's it. Angie, if I forgot anything, let me know.
No, it's great. It's great. Pass it over to Michelle with the Interfaith Committee.
All right, I just put some stuff in the chat. I wanted to make sure it was available. Podcast, last season we had 11 episodes. We just dropped the first episode of this season yesterday. That is in the chat. It's under Spotify, but the name this year is Weave and Cleave. And Pastor Yu is giving just a history of the faithful city and the work that he started at ASU 20 years ago. So that's where we started for this year. Also in the chat is a link to a PACES Connection blog post that he put on the PACES platform. I'm not sure when that was. He's going to be presenting at the Strong Brain conference, I think it's called. I don't know if it's a summit or a conference. The link for the registration is in there too. He'll be talking about the brain and spirituality. So that's exciting. The Belonging Project, which is through Maricopa County, is continuing to expand, and that's helping faith communities learn how to help people who are going through substance use and breaking the cycle of that. Tucson continues to expand. We have a good group down in Tucson, and they're doing all kinds of things all the time. We can't keep tabs on what they're up to. And then final is we are planning an interfaith breakfast for the fall. So we're looking forward to that and just organizing thoughts, what we want to gather people around. And then once we have a date, I'll share that at the next committee meeting, probably.
Thank you, Michelle. I so appreciate you being here and giving that giving the update for the interfaith committee. The Arizona Trauma Informed Faith Community Network, do you have any information on where they're at? I know that they were on a hiatus for a bit with COVID and just the resulting impacts of the pandemic.
Yeah. Are you asking about the regional gatherings?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
To be honest, I didn't even ask.
Okay.
But I know that I was participating in the regional meetings and haven't had any emails about them. So my guess is the hiatus continues based on that. Isn't that funny how you don't get an email and we don't even notice because we're like, oh, live,
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, thank you, Michelle.
You're welcome.
Clyde?
Yes, actually, we just had one here in Phoenix not too long ago, a couple of weeks ago, and we were primarily talking about the Belonging Project.
Okay.
And he actually has set some meeting dates for just before the conference, which is going to happen on Thursday, May the 4th.
Oh, fascinating.
That's the Belonging Project. The conference is going to take place that day. I think that's a Thursday.
It is a Thursday.
From 9 to 3 o'clock. I'm not sure where it's going to be at, but I think more than likely it will probably be up at Pure Heart Church, because he does holds a lot of his conferences up there and big gatherings and stuff. And the next meeting is going to take place on March. Actually, it's tomorrow, the 17th at 2 o'clock, and then April the 12th, Wednesday, April the 12th at 12, and then back to that third Friday in August at 2. And I can send you the email that he sent out if you want, so you can share with other people.
Okay.
Thank you, Clyde. And we'll put Sang-Hoon's email in the chat also. If you are interested in joining those meetings, if you email Sang-Hoon, he will get you on the email list. Thank you, Michelle and Clyde.
Yes, thank you. I'm glad he had extra information.
I get that. Well, Sang-Hoon does so much stuff that it's
So
really
much.
kind of, I know it's really
Which
kind of hard.
Which is why May 4th didn't make it on my list, because it was like,
Right.
oh yeah, and something also very important to mention. So
Right.
I'm not certain on the Pure Heart. We can get those details to you, Angie. I want to make sure where the location is before we say that that's where it's going to be, because I cannot remember, but I'm pretty sure there was a change.
Okay, perfect. And then we will send that out to everyone.
Thank
Thank you. Yeah. The Southern Arizona Trauma Informed Network. Hillary was not able to be here. She is on vacation today, enjoying that. In the chat, though, I did put the link to the Eventbrite for Satin's trainings. So Satin holds trainings every single month. They also have their own monthly meetings. I'll put Hillary's email address in there if you are in Southern Arizona and you would like to join their meetings. Their next training is Strengthening Families Through Productive Factors in April. In May, it's the Predicting Brain and Why It Matters. And in June, it's Compassion, Fatigue, and Self-Care. So all of those trainings are at no cost. They are all online, and they just have really, really great training. So if you are, if you would like to join that group, you can email Hillary, and I'll get the emails in after I do our next announcements. We have a couple save the dates. One, our trauma sensitive, which is the 7th annual this year. Trauma Sensitive School Symposium will be held June 6th. That is an event that is sponsored by ASU PFS Care, the consortium, and this year Arizona School Board Association is joining us also. The event is virtual. It is at no cost for educators. Last year, I think we had around 600 registered. This year is going to focus on resilience and resilience in action, what that looks like and what that looks like in schools. So kind of like our conversation today is, how do we put all this stuff into practice? The Trauma Sensitive School Symposium is going to focus on what does this look like in action, right, within our schools, and has a mixture of administrators, school board members, and also educators having those discussions. Our annual ACES Summit, our 10th annual one this year, is going to be held December 4th through the 7th. So mark your calendars. We will have a medical professional conference again. As a part of that, we are also going to do another schools specific conference during that time, in addition to our partnership with Prevent Child Abuse Arizona and our 2-day annual ACES Summit. So look forward to put those on your calendar. We're going to not do registration until later, but let's mark those days off for you. Some of our upcoming trainings and events, our next training of the trainers is our summer session. Our summer session is set up a little bit different than our other quarterly ones, because we understand this is set up for teachers to try and get it all in during the summer, but it's open to everyone. It's 5 days still, but it is the last 2 weeks of June. So June 19th, 21st, and 23rd, and then 27th and 29th. So if you're interested in the summer session for ACES Trainer of Trainer. We are also hosting a free youth mental health first aid training. That is May 17th. That is 9 a.m. to 3 p.m. There is a limit of 30 people that can participate. Mercy Care is providing this at no cost for us. There is also 2 hours of online work that has to be done prior to this training. We're having it kind of save the date right now. It's on our event calendar, and I am waiting for the registration link from Mercy Care. As soon as I get that, I will email everyone. Our next quarterly meeting is May 18th. We have our August 17th and November 16th for upcoming quarterly meetings. All right. And before I pass it over to Kavita for board updates, I do want to let everyone know that Kavita has stepped down as chair of the consortium. She has been an amazing chair for the last couple of years. And our terms do last 2 years for our board officers. And also Rose Phillips has been our secretary for the last couple of years, and it's been amazing. And I really just want to send a big thank you to them for all their work. Kavita's not leaving us. I'm not letting her go. So she's stuck with me for a bit, but she has stepped down from board chair and has really been a very key driving force over the last couple of years of really, as the consortium has grown by leaps and bounds, something we really kind of didn't expect as much. She has rolled with the flow, and she has she has been an amazing support in allowing the consortium to grow as the community has asked, instead of, forcing ways, but just kind of going with that. And it's been amazing to work with her. And so I just wanted to tell everyone how appreciative we are, and love to see emotions, emojis, and reactions in the chat, thanking Kavita for all of that work that she has put in over a pandemic and in immeasurable growth. And then I will pass it over, Kavita, for the remaining board updates.
Thank you, Angie, and thank you for your very generous and kind words. It's been an honor. With me stepping down, we want to acknowledge our new seats on our board. So Bob, most of you know Bob, he comes to almost every quarterly meeting. And he has served the consortium, in so many different and beautiful ways. Most recently serving as the chair of the Rural Committee, and also being my partner in crime for vice chair of the board. Super excited to see him now lead the board as chair. Some of you may be familiar with Laura. Laura Magruder is the CEO of Maggie's Place. Laura has done some tremendous work just even at Maggie's Place around trauma-informed care and really moving her organization to be trauma-informed certified. And really, even if you just take away the word certified, just the real essence and passion and what does it really truly mean to be trauma-informed. So I'm excited to have her on our board remaining, and also to be stepping into the place of vice chair. I get to do one of the things that I love to do, which is type and take notes. So I will be serving the board as secretary. I'm actually kind of like geeked out about it. I love taking notes. I'm weird, I know. And then Richard Weiss, he's a little bit of a newer board member, but he has stepped up and he will be serving our board as treasurer, and we are thrilled to have him in that role. So please feel free, if you know any of these folks individually, please feel free to reach out to them, thank them, throw up some emojis and some chats, because they'll be able to, I think, see it in the recording. Maybe not the chat. I don't know. I'm not so good at Zoom. So thank you all for supporting the board. And Angie, a big thank you to you for continuing to help guide the board as well, and really being the conduit between the team and the larger membership.
Ooh, we're ready for the next chapter, right? Where are we going next? Where are we going next? Before we totally close out the meeting, I would like to open it up for new business. Anybody have any events that are going on that you would like to share with our members? Feel free to come off mute in the chat. But what's going on in the community, Clyde?
So we have two events actually that will be happening next week. First is on March 22nd, which is next Wednesday. We are having our annual or biannual community forum. The topic is resilient youth, mental health. And we have a panelist of 3 youth and 2 adults. And it's going to be taking place at the South Mountain Community Center, which is on East Alta Vista Road, which is in between 7th Street and Central. And I'll send you that flyer. And then next Saturday, our Youth Taking Charge, YTC, which is our youth organization, they're doing their presentation. They're having a ditch vaping summit, which will take place next Saturday. And that's going to take place at the AMC Center 24, which is right here in downtown Phoenix. The movie that they'll be showing is Ant-Man and the Wasp, Quantumania. That's out of that Marvel universe, I guess. And that's free. Both of these events are free. And I will send you, Angie, the 2 flyers that I have to let people know. So they're free. So we invited everyone to come out. Thank you.
Thank you, Clyde. Thank you. And Tammy put in the chat a link for some of the upcoming trainings that Dr. Wolf is presenting. Those are free and live trainings. I did put the link to the trauma sensitive schools group in the chat, and I just remembered that I forgot to put the email addresses for Sanghoon and Hillary, so let me get those in here real quick. Any other updates? All right, well, if there are, please feel free to send them to us and we will get them out with the recording link and all those. Dalila put the Maricopa County Community Health Assessment Survey link. I'm assuming this is open just to those in Maricopa County. No, no worries. Yes, all residents of Maricopa County. Perfect. So that link is in the chat. I will send that along also. Okay, thank you for being here. I appreciate each one of you. And if you have any questions or anything, please feel free to reach out to us. Have a great week. We're almost to the weekend.
Thanks,
Bye,
everyone.
y'all.